Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study through the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are currently in Genesis chapter 3. I'm sorry, Genesis chapter 2, and I'm going to read verse 7, and then again, there's a couple of thoughts I want to finish. Verse 7 again says, Then the Lord God formed the man out of the dust from the ground and breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and the man became a living being. Now, I wanted to kind of go back and finish a couple of points. We've been talking about what is this, the being of man, and so we talked about the spirit, soul, and the body. Man is a spirit, lived in a have the soul and live in the body. I want to highlight that some more. And the reason why is because I think it'll help us to understand as we move forward, especially when we come to chapter 3. And originally I was going to kind of unpack some things in chapter 3. I'll do it now and then highlight it when we get to chapter 3, especially to understand what will happen in the garden. And so we said that at this point, when God creates, he formed man out of the dust. So we said he breathed the breath of life. Now this is his spirit into his nostrils. He said it wasn't air, but it was the spirit. And then he says man became a living being. And of course, some of your older translations, like the King James, say that man became a living soul. Okay, well, that's what the term soul means, that a living soul. That phrase means that man became a complete being. Now, the way God created us, spirit, soul, and body. So that is how he created us. That is how man is going to exist for all eternity. And that's whether you are saved or lost. See, even in the judgment seat, in the book of Revelation, it talks about the resurrection, or the second resurrection. That's the resurrection of the damned. Well, remember, resurrection means body stand. Okay, body stand. That's what the word resurrection means. Everyone will live with their body. The saved will live with their body. The unsaved will live with their body. But let's back up and then understand. So when God is forming man, now, of course, as we're studying the days of creation, the sixth day, this is the sixth day, God forms man's body. We could put it this way, from the elements of the earth. Now, in Genesis there it says the dust, but from the elements of the earth. In other words, man is earthly. In fact, Paul said this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And I wish I had went there. Let me see if I can. No, he basically says, in comparing our resurrection bodies with our earthly bodies. And Paul makes this statement. Adam was of the earth. Okay? Adam was of the earth. And then our new bodies, the resurrection bodies, will be spiritual bodies. Okay? They will be made of God or from God or spiritual bodies. Okay, so, and as he said, the first was then we are of this dust, the physical body that is. However, understand that the body of man, or the man himself, the human being, what is that? What did God create? Okay, so we see in Genesis here, he forms. Okay, he forms. Let me take another pot shot at evolution. as I said, even though the Bible is not is not a scientific book, I do not think it should be taught in the scientific disciplines, meaning scientific studies, scientific classes. Hold your horses, though. I do believe the Bible should be taught in public schools, because no greater book that has affected our society, in other words, America, and even the world, but America is who they are because of the Bible. Not because of atheists, not because of even evolution. And although there are people who believe in the evolution, Darwin's theory, they're not necessarily atheists, but without a doubt, understand what ties them all together is that they're ungodly. Which I believe that the motive of latching on to evolution is that if we can eliminate God from our consciousness, of course, as fools, they don't realize what that would do. The destruction, the carnage. I mean, you think about it. If there is no God, and you know, these are philosophical arguments that atheists have with Christians. But you know, in other words, where do you get your where do you get your morality from if there is no God? Valid point. Now, atheists dismiss that point, but it's still a valid point because it is true. Remember, we see right here from the beginning, God declares He is the creator of everything, which means everything is subject to God. So if God didn't create this, as Darwinism teaches, that this all proceeded from natural processes, then whose morality is right? And you certainly can't say, excuse me, you certainly can't say it's for the greater good. That's one of the arguments I've heard some atheists say. Well, we'll just get together and decide which for the greater good. Where have you seen that happen? Okay, and again, we'll get over more of that into the sinful nature. So the bigger thing is that what did God create? So man is a spirit. Now again, we talked about that. The spirit of man, that is the real you. You are a spirit being inside of a body. I want to be careful because some people trip over words when I say you are a spirit being. Angels are spirit beings. They are bodiless spiritual beings. An angel will never have a body. What we see in the Old Testament, or in fact, what we will see in our journey of the Old Testament, is there will be times when there will be an appearance of a man. So, in theological terms, that is called, like for example, God appearing as a man in the Old Testament. That is called a theophany. Jesus appearing as a man in the Old Testament is usually referred to as a Christophany or an angelophany. In other words, and we're going to see that where people will see an angel that they think is a man, a kind of a unique man, but they're still going to say, but as they're looking at it, okay. But angels are bodiless, okay, spirits. They are spirits. Man is a spirit with a body that God created. That condition will exist throughout all eternity. So we're going, as believers, we're going to get new bodies. Okay. Adam was created as an earthly man. Had Adam not sinned, then of course, for example, he'd still be alive today. Of course, the whole conditions around the earth would not have been affected. We'll get to that later. So man, the spirit of man, through the spiritual realm, the spirit being, your spirit, you contact the spiritual realm around you. Okay? Now this is important. Through the spiritual realm, you contact, I said that wrong. Through your spirit, you contact the spiritual realm, which would be God. Through your body, through your 5 physical senses, your sight, your hearing, your taste, touch, smell, you contact the physical world around you. Adam existed in both the spiritual and the physical world. In other words, understand he was able to relate. He was able to see God. He was able to sense God. That's what I mean by that. He's an earthly man, and then at the same time, through his 5 physical senses, he contacts the world around him. So now, what you receive, and I'm speaking of Adam. Let me go back to Adam because this is where we are here. What Adam then was able to see from the spiritual realm and from the physical realm, okay, that information, that data came into his soul. Now watch this. So his soul, his mind, his emotions, his desires, and his will. How do you control man? You control the will. How do you get control of the will? You get control of the mind, the emotions, and the desires, right? Car salesmen or salesmen do it all the time. They make you connect to their product, right? You walk into a car dealership, that man's not going to talk to you about payments, and he's not going to talk to you about all the technical stuff. He's going to tell you how good you look in that car, how that car is you. Either resting your mind, stirring your desires and your emotions. And then you have your will, sign on the dotted line. Okay? Sign on the dotted line. So, and later, so when Adam sins, okay, when he sins, understand his spirit was cut off. It's dead. That's spiritual death. And of course, in chapter 2, we're going to get into that. But when Adam sinned, it's like, okay, that spiritual part is now dead to him. And in reality, he was alienated from God's life. So now, man begins to only receive information through his 5 physical senses, because he was dead in his spirit. His spirit was, and death means to be separated from God. So he was no longer receiving that light, that information. Man began to live according to and be dominated by his lower nature. We call it the animalistic nature, right? The impulses of your body. So through the 5 physical senses, man became a slave to his impulses. More on that in chapter 3. I just kind of want to give us an understanding. Now, Adam, remember, his spirit was alive. He sensed and fellowship with God. He enjoyed that fellowship with God. And so everything was working the way it should have worked. His thoughts, his desires, his mind. We don't know the full impact or what, we could never know, but we can just kind of get an inkling of the purity of life, the joyous wonders of life back then went through an Adam. But and we're getting into chapter 3 because the most puzzling thing is, why, Adam, why did you sin? Okay. So, but at this time, so man was at his purest in terms of the purity of life, not only the innocence of life, but the purity of it. No disease, right? His no, you can say no immoral thoughts, right? There was no immoral thoughts because Adam was connected with God. I'll get into there. I'm gonna guesstimate a timeline that Adam was in the garden, but I'll do that later. But as far as Adam, when God breathed His Spirit and he became a living soul, that means through his 5 physical senses. And by the way, remember, he was thoroughly enjoying. Now think about this. Everything. Think about the purity of that. I don't have a good sense of smell. People say, how does this smell? I don't. But Adam, as he stands before God, he could thoroughly enjoy all his senses was able to give him, right? All his senses. He was able to enjoy the beauty of the flowers and the beauty of the landscape, the beauty of his wife, right? The smells, the thing about that, the smells, the tastes, right? He was able to enjoy all of that. And his mind and his emotions, right, was able to connect that, to feel that. His desires were pure, to want that, right? Everything was pure. And as his spirit was alive unto God, no condemnation, no shame, anything, right? Okay. So we will come to later, but understand Adam as he's in the garden, and we kind of got into this last time. Let me read this. It says, verse 7 again, and then the Lord God formed the man out of the dust of the ground, from the ground, and breathed the breath of life, that would be his spirit, into his nostrils, and the man became a living being. And then it says, the Lord God planted a garden in Eden, east, and there he placed the man whom he formed. Now, we'll come back to that probably in our next study as we're running out of time here. But where we're going to come to next week is this, the idea that man now, at this point, man is alone. And man is enjoying. He's enjoying life. He's enjoying, think about this. As I said, if you were an anthropologist and you came upon Adam and said, hey, how are you? One day after Adam was created, he was created a fully formed man. So from an anthropologist would say, well, you're about 30-ish, right? Depending on how you want to define fully developed. Everything, of course, from this case in terms of Genesis is as God started it, right? You think about the earth, right? God creates the earth and then boom, spins it in his orbit. Okay, I'll be a little dramatic there, right? Same thing with the universe. Not only does God spin the rotation of the earth, but then he flicks it around the sun. Of course, we know he does that through gravitational forces that he created. The wonders also is that, remember, the entire solar system is also trekking through the universe. Okay. So that, again, everything at some point has its starting point. That is why it's no wonder to me that you can say that if the earth is 6,000 years, that's not a problem in itself, because God would have created it from a starting point. God would have created it hitting the ground running. Okay? All right, I'm out of time, guys. We're going to pick it up again in the next study and get into the garden that God created and the woman that he created. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.